Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Today marks the episode of a beginning of a partnership that we're really genuinely proud of as the Firefighter podcast joins forces with PBI. Ahead of traveling out to Germany for Interschutz later on this month, we'll be joining PBI and announcing that partnership right there properly. And I wanted to begin with a conversation that goes far deeper than kind of a logo or a product or even just a piece of kit. Because every firefighter trusts their PPE, which they should. But how many of us truly understand it? Not just how it looks, not just whether it feels heavy, light, comfortable, or familiar, but what is actually happening inside those layers when heat starts to build, when the fire develops faster than expected, when the fabric is under stress, and when you're kneeling, crawling, moving, sweating, searching, making decisions, and really relying on that kit to give you time. PBI is one of those things that many firefighters will know by name, and many more will have worn without ever really knowing the story behind it. And that story is truly remarkable. It takes us to high temperature polymers, to NASA, to the Apollo program, and to the evolution of firefighting PPE. And also into the modern question of what we should really be asking from the gear that protects us. In my conversation today with Helm and Bill, we're going to get into the science, but more importantly, we translate that science back to the fireground as well. We're going to talk about heat transfer, not just flame. We're going to talk about why firefighters are not usually getting burned because their kit catches fire, but because the heat gets through faster than expected. We talk about decomposition temperatures, oxygen index, break open protection, durability, moisture barriers. We're going to talk about comfort, movement, fatigue, and why heavier doesn't automatically mean safer. We're also going to get into some of the uncomfortable truths about tradition, procurement, and culture. The color of the kit as an example, the romance, the old ways, the idea that safety and aggressive firefighting are somehow opposites, and they're not. As we discuss this in the episode, good gear is the real thing that is only one real corner of the triangle. The other two are, of course, proper training and proper risk assessment. And that, for me, is where this conversation really matters, because PPE is not just there to make us reckless or anything like that. It's there to give trained firefighters the protection, mobility, and margin they need to make better decisions in worse environments. Everything is changing for us. Modern fire services, of course, changed, but also the fuel loads have changed. Buildings have changed, toxicity has changed, and the expectation on firefighters has changed as well. So the kit, the testing, the standards, and the way we make procurement decisions have to keep evolving too. Firefighters hate being sold to, and this is not a sales pitch, but we do love to learn. So we've put this episode in a way that makes you understand what has quietly been protecting you around the world for more than 40 years and asking better questions about the equipment we trust with our lives. So whether you're an operational firefighter, an instructor, a procurement lead, a senior officer, or just someone who has pulled on fire kit for years and years and years without really understanding what's inside it, this conversation is for you. Because the better we understand what protects us, the better decisions we can make about how we train, how we operate, what we buy, and how we come home. Because when you strip it all back, PPE is not just clothing. It's science, it's trust, and leadership stitched around a firefighter. Here's my conversation with Helmut and Bill from PBI. I'll see you on the other side. Absolutely everybody in the world in the sector of firefighting will actually know what this is, but they also, in the same vein, it's been around for so long, it may be integrated into every single part of their professional life and what keeps them safe, and they may not know anything about it. So we've got this dual challenge today that I want to try and cover the utopian full spectrum. And I think it'd be a best place to start by cycling us all the way back and not making any assumptions and going, who are PBI and where did this whole thing sort of get started?
Sure. Thanks. So where it got started was way back in the late 50s with this guy named Dr. Marvel. Real name, Dr. Marvel.
I love that.
I know.
You can write that.
No, you can't write that. But he in 1959, he gets contracted with the U.S. Air Force to study high temperature polymers, right? And he was a renowned PhD chemist who had worked for the U.S. government on numerous projects going back through World War II and everything. Yeah. So anyway, him and another doctor, Dr. Vogel, theorized that the azole ring, which is a combination of carbon atoms and nitrogen atoms, was very stable. And they said if they can incorporate that azole ring into a polymer, that it would give really nice thermal properties. So they've set out to do that, and the result was polybenzimidazole. So in short, PBI. They made some. They they tested it, and sure enough, it had thermal properties beyond what everybody was expecting. And they wrote a paper about it, and that paper sat on the shelf until 1967,
Jesus.
when the Apollo 1 fire happened, where 3 astronauts were killed in a test in the capsule,
Yes.
where it was a raging fire that went through the whole capsule and they had no chance to get out, and it was a terrible tragedy. So NASA went out and looked for anything that was flame resistant and found this paper. And they said, this looks interesting. We want to make this polymer into a fiber. So they went to Celanese, and Celanese had been making fibers for years and years and years, and said, can you take this polymer, make a fiber out of it? And they said, we think so. So they started making PBI fiber in a pilot plant operation in Summit, New Jersey, and started supplying NASA with this fiber. And they made undergarments that they put under the spacesuits for the Apollo program, and that went through Skylab and didn't make it to the shuttle. They redesigned the suits, after Skylab, but that's how PBI got started. Now, Celanese and had this pilot plant, and they were making this fiber. What else can we do with it? Well, one of the things was, well, maybe it's good for firefighting. So they put it into a trial with that was sponsored by the IAFF, the union here, and some other folks, called Project Fires. And part of what they were trying to do was, what is the best protective material out there? And so they tested the current product, which was Nomex 3A. They tested a 60-40 blend of PBI with Kevlar fiber, and they tested 100% PBI. And lo and behold, the 60-40 blend performed the best. It wasn't as good as the 100% PBI, but PBI in general is a weak fiber, so it needed some strength in order to perform, so the durability wasn't there. And the cost was pretty high. So that 60-40 blend became the standard. And with that information, Celanese said, well, we need a bigger plant. And they started building one in 1980, got it commissioned, started up the polymer in 1982, started making fiber in 1983, and that's how we got started.
That still seems, when you think about how long firefighting's been around, that still seems remarkably recent. In the UK, we just did, 200-year anniversary from Edinburgh, Fire and Rescue in Scotland. And I almost feel like it might be slightly sad that, firefighting around the world have been recognized for, over 100 years by that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it took something like, now you see this with Formula One as well. Things something like NASA or Formula One, they have innovations in those higher paid, marginal gains industries. And then 5, 10, 15 years later, they filter down into our lives, whether they be in our homes or, in Formula One, you see it in cars 10, 15 years later. And I just think to myself, why was sort of the government, everybody not so much more focused on how do we keep firefighters safe back then? It's great that we see these innovations come through, but that's the whole, the future's here, but it's not evenly distributed, because people, in space shuttles were having that level of thermal protection, and then it took a number of years for it to filter down into the world of firefighting. Because back then, like you said, what were the sort of suits that people would have been wearing internationally there? I mean, Helmut, you might be able to speak to this. When you first came into it, what was the spread like when you saw the backgrounds of the development? Has certain continents or countries or parts of the world lagged behind or stretched out forward?
I mean, I have to go back a lot more years before I started PBI. I was a firefighter, volunteer firefighter in southern Germany, Bavaria. And we had heavy cotton wool things. It was not any way FR. It was heavy, like workwear in gray. I remember pretty well. Work comfort was not existing, basically. It was just heavy sailcloth kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, as I'm a fiber person, I've always been in technical fibers. I watched the market from outside before I even knew I would join PBI. Then in the 80s, I think there was a kind of change, and Pete, probably you will remember, when Nomex or the Aramids came into the game, that people said, hey, there's a new kind of fiber, which is flame resistant, inherently flame resistant. We can make lighter weight garments, more work comfort, but also higher protection or real thermal protection. That was in the 80s. And then
William Wood watches are back supporting the podcast, and honestly, it means a lot to me because this brand is built on real service heritage. Whether it's the melting down of the original 1920s British brass firefighter helmets, and they also use upcycled fire hose on all of their straps. It's not just design, it's about the job, and it's built into every single component. I've been wearing them for 10 years now. Found them back in 2015, actually, and they've genuinely been a part of my daily kit ever since. I've got two. I've got the Valiant, and I've got the Chivalrous as well in Midnight Blue. But the thing about the brand, about William Wood watches, it stands so different because of its story. Take, for example, their Dunkirk watch. That's not just a timepiece. It's actually built to honour the Massey Shore fireboat. I'll be honest though, the one I've got my eye on this year is the Fearless. It's more of like a field watch on the station, on the watch. It's a smaller 39mm case, compact, rugged, just feels right for the job. So you can actually get 10% off a William Wood watch by using code FFPodcast. If you want to be part of the history and you want to wear it on your wrist, jump in the notes, check out William Wood watches. Let's get back to the show.
PBI got international in the mid of 90s, 95, 96, with 3 brigades in the UK. So that's how PBI started the international market.
Do you think that like the UK element of it, was that just because certainly back then, I mean, the UK is struggling a little bit internationally in its sort of economical and influence, but back in the 80s, it was still in its much fuller swing in terms of being a bit of a hub of, not necessarily hub of innovation, but you did see some things happen here quicker. And I don't really fully understand why, because UK is tiny. It's absolutely tiny on a global scale, but there's something still about us now that seems to have, I don't know. From a policy and a standards perspective, people historically used to look at the fire and rescue service models in the UK and go, and there's a lot of copy and paste. I was recently in Australia, and you see a lot of their stuff as, the manuals of firemanship. There's Massey Shore documents still knocking about in brigades there that they're drilling off now, and you go, wow, the innovation hasn't stepped up there, but certainly in terms of the fire resistant element of it. So for yourself, Helmut, back then, was it that the concept was, because obviously firefighters were still experiencing burns and being sent into environments that were remarkably unsafe. But if we'd have known better, we'd have done better. And it's not that necessarily firefighters aren't getting burned because their gear caught fire. They were getting burned because the heat was just getting through so much faster than expected. And I know that might be a clever word game that I'm trying to play there, but for either of you, could you try and explain the difference between like heat capacity of things versus how heat penetrates through these things and how PBI kind of interrupts that, I suppose?
Well, I think probably instructive would be the history. So when PBI first started, like I say, back in the early 80s, it struggled mightily. And mainly because because there's 3 things about the fire kit that everybody looks at, and it's protection, comfort, durability, and appearance sometimes plays a factor.
Appearance used to be the biggest one, I think.
It was.
Uniforms in like, you see army, military people back then wearing, and you're like, that's not practical functional gear to be on in a tactical environment, but they just had these suits and stuff. You're like, it's crazy. Right.
So appearance was, and one of the biggest things when breaking into the US market when we first started was, well, PBI, being inherently flame resistant also makes it difficult to dye. So you really get the color that you're going to get, which is back then they would call baby brown, crap.
Globally, we called it PBI gold. Everyone, but they called it baby brown.
That innovation came later, basically saying, let's rename it PBI gold. And all of a sudden that was something else. But traditionally fire suits were black or navy.
Yeah.
Right. And so breaking into the U.S. market was difficult. It took a few, innovative chiefs to say, wait a minute, I don't give a crap what it looks like.
Is that because they were so romantic, do you think? Because they still have it with their helmets. The helmets and their bunker
yeah,
gear, you're like, come
yeah, I
on.
know.
I love it. I've got 2 of them here, but I'm like,
Right.
guys, this is so not the amount of subcranial fractures
It's very
and neck
difficult
injuries.
to break these
Come
traditions,
on.
right?
Yeah.
It's so anyway, Phoenix was one of the first,
Okay.
and several on the West Coast decided that we don't care what it looks like, we don't care what color it is, we're going with it.
Yeah.
And that's how it got kind of going. Now, in the story of New York, so New York had the same, it had 2 issues. One, it was high boots and long coats. That was their kit. So they were constantly getting burns up underneath,
Yeah.
inside places you don't want to burn, really.
Yeah.
So Giuliani came into that as the mayor in '92, right? And within 6 months of his coming in, they had 5 firefighters die of burns. They had 2 burn centers that were full of firefighters, and then they had 30 lawsuits from firefighters for not protecting them correctly, right? So the first one of those suits settled for $1 million. Now, $1 million back then was a lot of money. A lot more money than it is today, but it was '90. So Giuliani brought in his fire counselor chief and said, "Look,
solve this problem.
Just go out, find the best and buy it. Just do it." So they went on a massive 6 months trial. Now, they came out and said, PBI, the bunker gear with PBI is the best. And they said, this is what we're going to go with. But it's got to be black. I mean, there was no question about it. It was going to be black. So like I said, it didn't die that great. So you had shades of light gray to dark black that came right off the line. They said, yeah, this is what we can do. And they kind of looked and said, it's okay. And so that's how we got New York. New York was a big milestone, not only for the US, but for the world. So that's so when Helm talks about the 3 brigades, I was the one that was actually doing the sales at that point. That's what they brought me in to do. I was traveling up and down the UK. I'm very familiar with all your roads, and I used to carry the big map, the big table maps, and I was trying to navigate through all the different little
some
roads.
Lovely, weird countryside is very different.
Oh, it's fantastic. I had a great time. The first time I was there, I put 1,100 miles on a station wagon rental. It was great.
Nice. What is it about the color of stuff? You know what? I was abroad recently, and we have these totally random segue here. Do you know what fish fingers are? Fish fingers. So in the UK we have fish fingers. It's like a baked snack. You cook it in the oven. In the UK we have them all orange. They have to be orange. But you go somewhere else. I was in America recently, and they're grey because the batter that they put them in is just, it's just the color that it comes out. No one really cares for that over there.
Right.
But here we're so like salmon. We have salmon has to be pink. Well, it's only pink if it's come from a certain place and it's got the sea salt that it's been swimming in or whatever it is, makes it pink.
Right.
But we're so familiar with color of things. And if something looks faded, we're like, we start to make assumptions and associations of safety or legitimacy or something. It's a weird, I don't know what the cognitive lock is that we have in that, but it's got to be such a blocker if your true metric, there's almost like a hypocrisy to like the department chiefs that you were talking about there. Like, safety is the number one thing. Caveat, it's got to be black. Caveat, it's got to be blue. You know what I mean? You're like, well, which one do you want? Because if you want the best, this is going to be the best. But there's a weird romanticism to that, isn't it? And I think we still struggle with it because tradition is both a strength and a weakness. Tradition is, upholding standards, upholding, beliefs and memory and all this sort of stuff. And also around that sort of era, 70s, 80s, I mean, some could argue still now, the American concept of line of duty death, like that word, LODD, it's like it is part of your duty that you may or may not die. Whereas in the UK, we think about it very differently. We're like, no, this is a job. I mean, we love it, don't get me wrong. But like, you shouldn't be an expectation that you might actually, die doing this. And I wonder how much that has been a blocker for people embracing real safety innovations. because if they're thinking, well, firefighters die, it's a dangerous job. Whereas PBI are coming into the market and they're like, this isn't necessary. We've come up with a way better product. And my word's not yours,
Yeah.
but if some people can just get over themselves a little bit, you could be putting this on everybody.
Yeah, and actually, it's an interesting point because I actually had somebody that's very well known in the fire service. It was a Charlotte firefighter and runs a conference here, and he was saying, if you speak, he was talking to me about, next year maybe speaking at this conference, and he said, what I really like you to do is emphasize safety because people are starting to get away from it. Talking, we don't get burns very much. We don't go to many fires. We don't do this. We don't do that. And why do we have to keep draining like this? Or why do we have to focus on safety? And I'm like, wow, that's a different concept.
There is an
I
irony
believe,
between aggressive firefighting and safety. Some people think they're opposites. They think they're diametrically opposed to each other. But like, I remember one of the best fire behavior instructors I ever had. He was like, warm to inform, don't burn to learn. You need to
right,
create and simulate an environment, but you've got high
correct,
quality protective gear on. And if you're a
right,
professional firefighter, you shouldn't be coming out with a burn. You should be
right.
better than that.
You should know the signs either in the fire
Yeah.
itself of what's going on or what you're feeling
Or your
to
discipline
say,
in the way
okay,
you're wearing your
I've
gear.
gone as
Yeah.
far as I can go. Now, there's been cases where, obviously if there's a life on the line, there's a rescue that's being going
Yeah.
on, that's a different situation. And these guys, as you know, will do anything to try to save a life.
Mhm.
And that's where they, can get into those places where things can go bad pretty quickly.
Mhm.
I mean, I had an interesting story years and years ago. It was a German chief, and I heard a lot of presentations in different regions, different countries, different continents. But that chief, because it was also, do we need the best gear? Is it too dangerous? Then some older chiefs, oh, we needed our sensors. Our ears were the sensors, so we don't need a
Yeah.
flash. We could
Flash
feel the
hoods.
heat. And that guy stood up. It was the chief of Braunschweig, I think. Can't remember the name. He's retired many years ago. He says, we have this famous triangle, three corners. First is best gear, second corner, best training on the job, as much as intensive as it can be, and proper risk assessment. Do we go in? How do we go in? And I like that presentation because he nailed it down to an important model like this triangle. That the best gear is important, but also best training and best risk assessment. And the
Yeah.
whole combination. It was a very modern approach, I have to say.
MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture, and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high-performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. That's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake. I think we're bringing that professionalism back to it in that respect. And I try and bring it from a sense of professionalism. I'm like, if you are truly passionate about being a great firefighter, these things aren't accepted. That you're likely to get cancer. Oh, you're likely to get burns. You're like, no, be better. Be better. That doesn't mean, these aren't scars of victory. Do you know what I mean? These are, be a better firefighter,
Yeah, I have to push back sometimes when people say, oh, we're protecting these guys too much. They're getting in too far. And I said, guys, wait a minute. This is you've got the best gear out there.
Mm-hmm.
You need to train with that gear to understand where you are in the fire. And it's that combination of training and having good gear. I have to say, the US, line of duty deaths from fire have gone down dramatically. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that the gear itself has gotten so much better.
Yeah.
including with PBI. I mean, we have, I think it's 90% of the top 40 cities in the United States. I mean, so we got the biggest departments using the gear, and they're the ones who have the most activity in the fires and everything else. So it's gratifying to me that we're protecting, and that's what gets our team gratification, is that we can do all the testing and show all the presentations and everything else. But when we see a video of a firefighter falling through a roof and then crawling back out, and he's not burned,
Mm-hmm.
that's what gets us.
I want to put an important caveat. I was listening back to myself then. We're not saying people that get injured are rubbish firefighters. That's not what I'm saying, and that's not what anybody's saying. But it shouldn't be an expectation of it. But when people are saying, we're pushing firefighters to go further and do more, I don't think that's true, because I always think about it from a context of A, the environment, and B, what's on fire. Because when we were sending firefighters in the 70s, we're not asking them to do more than the people in the 70s were doing now. We're not sending, but fires were different. Fires weren't the same. You think about the fuels back then; they were mostly, natural materials, wood, cotton, wool. They were slower to develop. They had lower sort of peak temperatures, and they were typically like a compartment fire might just get like 4, 5, maybe 600 degrees, and they had a lot more ventilation as well. Because certainly in the UK, colder environments, we've got double glazing, we've got thermal protection in all of our houses, and you had more warning signs for things like a flashover. But as modern fires have developed now, we've got petroleum-based plastic foams, composites, way faster growth, higher heat release rates. You're talking up in the 1,000 to 1,400s regularly in smaller compartments, more heavily insulated. So when people go, well, firefighters shouldn't be going that far in, I'm like, no, the gear has to develop, because the stuff that's up, the fires aren't the same. People go, fire. No, it's not. That honestly, you are just exposing a massive gap in your knowledge there. If you say things like that in a fire department, if anyone else around you knows what they're talking about, you're actually looking a little bit silly, because the gear needs to develop, because fire has changed, hasn't it?
There's no question about that. I mean, there's been many studies showing, I think UL, put together rooms that were, 50s style, materials in the furniture and the cartons and everything else, and everything would smolder for 20 minutes, and you did it in a modern thing, and the thing's engulfed and fully engulfed. It's
minute and
just
a half
incredible.
It's reached flashover.
It's crazy.
And we're getting to them, and we still need to go in and try and commit to rescue, or we need to try and contain it to compartment of origin, or at least to the floor. Because I always say the public will clap no matter what, whether you keep it to the room of origin or the whole building burns down. They'll go, well, you tried your hardest. But firefighters should still be empowered to have the aspiration to close that down aggressively as quickly as possible. But they can only do that if they've got the right gear in order to be doing it. So I wanted to shine a light on that, just to open up the door to talk about the sort of decomposition rates, because this is where I think that gear is not all made evenly. No matter when people go, well, it's kind of all the same, but it's just kind of your preference on color and fit for form and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, no, it's not, because when you look at some of the Nomex stuff, it's a good 200-300 degrees less, in my limited understanding, for the composition, right? I'm sure one of you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, the difference in decomposition temperatures are, significant. I mean, you're talking,
what does that
like
mean for people that don't know what it
300 degrees C?
Yeah.
So there's a test that we do on a materials called the thermal gravitational analysis, and you basically take a small amount of a product and you put it in a small chamber, and that chamber is heated up at 10 degrees C, and it's on a weight scale. So all you're doing is looking at how much weight is going away from this product as this temperature continues to increase. And at some point, it just drops off, and it just falls off the cliff, and it completely goes away, goes into its, whatever gaseous state it's going to go to. So that point where it drops off is called the decomposition temperature. And so the longer that holds out, the better that product is going to hold up into a thermal environment. And so that's the way we measure, and it's very significant, and it can be shown in the fabrics and everything else that we do, that's what PBI does very well.
So from on the ground helmet, like when you're speaking to people, how does that affect? Because I want to translate this into how it's actually helping the firefighter for a second before we move on to another point. But like, I feel like this has a big impact on people's decision-making capability because of the additional thermal sort of resistance, if you will, that the different products you're giving people. Because if you're not feeling it through the suit and you're allowed and you're enabled, empowered to be able to operate in that environment for longer, it gives you a greater decision-making capacity, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what Bill just said is it's the chemical background, the TGA, or then the LOI, the limiting oxygen index. That's basically the amount of oxygen you would require to keep a material burning. You know, here we have 21% in the atmosphere. PBI has a LOI of 43. That means you need 43% of oxygen, whereas aramids are in the middle of the 20s. So the higher that number, the more stable the material is. But that's all kind of science. We also translate it into the final product. That means you have an outer shell made of 40% PBI, and we have tests in place like the dynamic flame test, which kind of simulates. We put flame on the material under stress, like, you're wearing a garment, you have stress, scratches, shoulder parts, and that shows how long the fabric holds up when exposed to temperature of 1,000 degrees plus minus Celsius. And then you see that all the PBI fabrics hold a lot longer than any other material out there. And then the ultimate test, we transfer into a mannequin burn, like BDG or ITEX or the one in Geneva, where we burn a full set of gear, where you get then the burn expectations and so on and so forth. And we can demonstrate that the science, like Bill described in the TGA or LOI testing, translates into the final product, which means it shows the much higher protection of PBI gear gives to the wearer, to the end user who's using it. And we do this on a regular basis to really test the material and the real conditions, as real as possible.
Yeah. But I think that's where I struggle why people wouldn't find that to be one of the most critically important moments, because we know there's always going to be pressure points. Until we come up with some crazy innovation to put in our mouths, we're always going to be having a Bergen-style set on our backs, which is forever going to create those pressure points. And even if you didn't have that, you've got the kneeling, you've got the maneuverability, you've got the way the firefighter moves in the compartment is always going to create those compression points and those pinch points on the body. And I think when we historically used to think about thermal protection, maybe you could speak to this, Bill, like heavier used to feel, it's like when you get a pair of boots. If you've got a heavy pair of boots, you assume they're better. You assume they're going to last longer. You assume, you make all this kind of weight equals reliability mechanism that we do in our heads. And I'm sure before my time, perhaps, suits just started getting heavier and heavier. I mean, Helmet, you spoke to how heavy and thick some of the stuff you're wearing. You know what I mean? Like, that has really flipped on its head due to some big innovations in the last sort of 15 or so years, hasn't it? And I think, I can't speak to the American market, but I feel like the Americans are still in a little bit of a heavy equals safe mentality. Whereas I feel like over the UK, we've moved on.
It's driven by the standards of each country too. Okay. So the standards, for the EU or for ISO are different from NFPA, and that's what's driven. And that's where the innovation, I think, is really is a most of need of the testing and the standards. Okay. Because at some point you're going to get to a limit. So
firefighters, police officers, and first responders are now stepping into environments wired with more high voltage than ever before. Everything from electric vehicles to solar panels feeding direct current through compromised structures, overhead power lines, and illicit drugs factories with improvised lethal bypasses. Any single strike in the wrong place in this type of environment can turn things fatal very quickly, and that is exactly why we've partnered with Jafco. You already know Jafco are. They have been relied upon for decades for sturdy, get-the-job-done equipment, and they are not resting on their laurels. They are evolving to face the challenges first responders are handling today through their insulated tool range. These are purpose-built for the scenarios where contact with hidden electrical hazards isn't just possible, it is increasingly likely. Their insulated tools are engineered for real-world abuse and use, designed to keep firefighters, police officers, and all first responders alive in environments where electrification is outpacing policy, equipment, and training. And you know this. This is the kind of innovation our sector needs and the kind of investment organizations should be stepping up to support if we are serious about protecting first responders from fatal consequences. So a massive thank you to Jafco for backing the podcast and backing the crews on the ground. Go check them out, learn what they're doing, and bring that conversation into your service, because this isn't about the future, it's about right now.
The 3 layers being the outer shell, the moisture barrier, and the thermal liner. That combination is trying to get you your protection, your comfort, and your durability. And all 3 of those things play against each other. So if you want to have, there is a mass does equal more thermal protection, but it also lessens your comfort. And so those things are that you're playing off. And the thing that we're seeing now is more firefighters, especially in the U.S., the younger ones, they want to be comfortable. They, that comfort is getting a higher. I don't know if it's surpassed protection yet, but some of them might think it is. But it's something that
well, there's
they're
an irony,
really
isn't
looking
there?
for.
Because the lighter and more comfortable the thing is, the more tactical you can be, the more proficient you'll be, the quicker you might move. So then there's an argument for you're going to spend less time in the environment anyway. And it's that kind of sliding scale on where your personal preference sits, or where the national preference sits, that's going to lead to what it is.
Right. And the decision making is based on one of, usually they have something of all 3 of those categories somewhere in their standard or whatever they're doing. What we've seen innovation wise in the last 10 years, the outer shell fabrics have gotten a lot softer and more maneuverable. And those things have made a big difference in the comfort factor, because if you get a stiff fabric on the outside, it really does restrict your movement. And so the fabrics have, and that's something that the fabric people have done, not necessarily what fiber has done, but PBI being a very high, I guess, a low modulus product. Modulus is another measure of tensile strength. It's very flexible, so it fits very well with this whole twill fabric weave that ends up being very strong. Because we incorporated back in 2003 the use of filament. So a filament fiber is a continuous string, whereas spun fiber is one where you take short lengths and spin it in like a cotton spinning. And, so it's fuzzier and whatever, but it's not as strong as a filament. And so we introduced filament Kevlar into the garment or in the fabric back in 2003. And the fabric manufacturers have done innovations since then. So they actually use more filament in that whole, and that goes after the durability, and it also goes after the strength. I mean the comfort, because that fabric is a lot more flexible. And so it's the innovation, I think. And when you talk about the U.S. being a higher weight, and they have to be, because the temperature or the testing that they use is called the TPP, and it's basically a flat fabric, one heat source, and then you measure the heat that comes through, and then you go through this testing where it basically crosses what they call the Stoll curve, which is a second degree burn indicator, and then that gives you a number. Okay, well, that test has been around for almost 70 years. Okay, we've come up with, along with another company called Thermetrics, who makes TPP machines and lots of other different machines, a flash fire cylinder. Now, a cylinder. Now, when you think about it, we're testing fabrics that are flat with one sensor. That is nothing near what a firefighter is, right?
And that's is it what you're optimizing for? It's the whole thing. Like,
correct.
Not everything that's worth measuring is measured, and not everything that's measured is worth measuring. But they've had that in there for 70 years now.
Right, and they feel comfortable with. They know the number, and it's like, oh, I want this, but it's a limiting factor now. Okay, because the TPP you have to have a number of 35. Okay, well, we're right there. They're not going to get any lighter or any more comfortable or anything else because of that limit. Now, the flash fire cylinder is a cylinder. Okay, stands about 15 inches or so. It's about 4 inches in diameter. To some guys, that's their bicep, whatever. And then you got 15 sensors on it. Okay. and then you have a prescribed amount of air. Okay. The thing about what people don't understand about where the protection comes from, a lot of it is how much air is between the outside of that garment and your skin.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing you can do for protection is as much air between there. The fabrics and everything help, but it's the air that really is the insulation.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you test on this cylinder, it gives you a much better indication of how that's going to happen, how that composite is going to do with a firefighter
in
in a garment.
realities. Yeah.
In a real, yeah, exactly. And the thing that's also very interesting is that you can discern different outer shells, different moisture barriers, different thermal liners. In the TPP right now, you can't really tell the difference between any. You can put all kinds of different combinations; they all come out about the same.
Thereabouts.
And so, but this thing, we've done enough testing. We see differences when you do just small changes in the composite, and you're saying, well, that could drive a lot of innovation to actually get us to a point where we can have try to increase the protection, but also do the comfort. Now you combine that with the moisture barrier test, or what's called the sweaty hot plate, where they try to see how much moisture will go through that composite.
Yeah, you wet
combine
something, its
those two.
conductivity is going to increase and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, it's basically how much moisture can you move away from the body, because part of the heat stress is one of the big factors we have. We have more firefighters killed from heart attacks now than from fire.
I've had some before where it is just like boil in the bag type suits because your body just can't breathe. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the innovation in the testing needs to happen in order to get more innovation that's going to go up in these composites. And I think eventually we're going to get there. We've got an ASTM method now for that particular test. Now it's just a matter of working it into the standards and getting people to recognize that this is a better way to understand, what a firefighter may see.
I mean, coming back to what you said earlier, Pete, about the work comfort, the challenge is of future innovation. People want more work comfort in most countries, but also they don't want to sacrifice on protection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very tricky and challenging game, to get better work comfort, lighter weight fabric, different composites whatsoever, but not sacrifice any level of protection. Some want to even increase the protection. We have fabrics out there in new fiber blends which would allow us to even increase protection and still improve work comfort. Two things which don't match, but we found ways to match it. Still, you have regions in the world out there where work comfort is not that important. Just let me give an example. In Japan, they still some brigades use aluminized gear. You wouldn't believe it, where 50% of the outer shell is aluminum with zero breathability. It's you put the garment on and immediately
and high conductivity too.
You think, how can they wear it? But it's also mentality, they don't complain, they work because
they don't complain, baby. You do as you're told.
Exactly.
And you don't want the job, we'll find somebody else to do it, and we're going to send you over there somewhere.
Yeah. But luckily, most other countries are different. They don't care about the colors anymore. I remember when I started, Germany was blue. A German firefighter in Bavaria had to be blue.
Mm-hmm.
If you travel through Germany, you see a lot of gold color, PBI or Aramids. They don't care anymore. Even the state of Hessen announced last year they opened up the color spec. Hessen has, Frankfurt, Wiesbaden has always been blue. Now the new spec allow gold color because they learned if you want to have the best products, to insist on a color doesn't make sense then if you go for innovation.
What sort of continent or nation are you finding was some of the first? I know we've mentioned it already, but just to zoom in on it, like what was the first domino to tip when you look globally at people that lead with data or lead with science or are more open to genuine innovation and are more comfortable to step away from rigid tradition?
That's a good question.
Well, I'd have to say that, we had a gentleman that worked for us many years ago. guy by the name of Walt Lehman, and he was going to Australia when they were wearing wool.
Mhm.
Okay, and usually the progression was, well, you have wool or cotton, you go to an aramid, like a Nomex or something like that, and then eventually you can get to the higher protection. And Walt kind of said, no, I think we can take them directly. And now, of
Full
course,
leap.
wool garments are very cheap.
Mhm.
PBI is probably the most expensive. He says, I think I can make this leap. And to their credit, and to his credit, he was right. He was able to get that continent to move from a what would be considered a very, very rudimental
Mhm.
protection to the highest protection in a matter of 10 years.
Wow. Quick pause, because I want to tell you about a new partnership we have with First Tactical. First Tactical builds equipment for people who work when environments are seriously unforgiving. And if you go to their website, you'll find kit is designed specifically for us, for firefighters, for police officers, technical rescue teams, fire investigation, hazmat, hazardous materials teams, urban search and rescue. This is honestly the equipment that you really want to rely on. It's built for real operations, real pressure, long ass days, and I genuinely use this stuff. Here's a few of my favorites. They've got their men's Defender short sleeve. I've got that in black. It's got a huge load of specialized pockets, space for all of our gears, the pads, the pens, all of the stuff. It's got them on the sleeves on both sides. Also got the Defender pants. These have got 28 pockets in total on them. It's mad. Let's be honest, we absolutely love the bags. I use their 25-litre specialist half-day backpack. The shoulder straps as well are strong AF. Like I say, this isn't lifestyle gear. Is built for real world, real operations. We talk about the realities of the job, and First Tactical is just the ideal partnership for us. So go take a look, firsttactical.co.uk. Now back to the show.
It's been much slower in other parts. Now, the UK did move very quickly. I would have to say the UK was the second one that really, from 96 to 2005, there was a lot of brigades that just moved straight in. I mean, they were,
is this maybe a bit of a Matthew principle? Is it an economical challenge for some people? You said about how historically the wool was just so incredibly cheap and abundant. It's made en masse. It's used in just general normal life products and stuff like that. It could be an economical element where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You know, the rich get able to interact with newer innovations quickly. But then I suppose there's also the flip side of that argument that even people like Japan and China and places like that, I don't think their economies are ever particularly struggling. It's probably something different there because it's not an economical challenge. Maybe it's just, a political decision, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, like I said, it starts a lot of times with the standards and what they do and how they put it together. But we're finding that the receptivity of the concept of having protection, comfort, and durability, as those are the three main things, and in that order, that we, if you start with that, the protection part, we're able to convince folks that that's where they need to start.
But aside from that,
over.
like even if you had the best, most heat resistant product in the world, I always find that durability is probably where I'd like to think it's where products win or lose, but I don't know because I've got like some great pairs of boots and some great, personal possessions, great bags and stuff like that I've had for 10, 15 years just because you like them, they're good and they last. And I wonder if some of the economical challenges as well is because both politically in governments, but also in organizations, we move in periods, financial years. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, well, we can't go over into here. And it's like the whole buy well, buy once. Because especially even from a durability perspective, the tear strength differentials between certain products is massive. Because you might think you're getting a cheap deal with a wool product or something else. But the durability of those is significantly less, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's good, and that's another area that innovation is going to have to step in because what we're seeing, especially in the U.S., is typically, when I got into the business, guys would get their new gear, and it looked too good. They go around, roll around in the dirt, and get it all kind of mussed up, whatever. And now that's not the mentality at all. They want to get it cleaned. They want to get it, put back,
We've moved
in
away
best
from
shape
the
that they can.
salty firefighter covered in soot. Decontamination's
Right,
done a lot of that heavy
and
lifting as well, I
driven a
think.
lot by the cancers, that
Yeah.
have popped up. I mean, there's no doubt about it that not only are the environments you talk about now are more flammable, but they release some really nasty stuff into the
Yeah. The
atmosphere, and
carcinogen
you really
profile, as toxicology has
right,
advanced, has really shone an uncomfortable light on,
right,
Jesus, we're in some
right.
nasty stuff here. Yeah.
Very nasty. And so the emphasis of getting that gear cleaned and getting it, off your body and getting showers on the site and all these other things to
Yeah.
get all that stuff off of you. And what happens now, well, you're not only is firefighting a very, demanding on the on the on the fabrics and everything like that, but you add on more washes, and washing can be very demanding as far as what it does to the fabric. You take just your own shirts.
Yeah.
If you wash them a bunch of times, they don't look as good,
No.
and
I
they
don't
don't.
mind buying stuff from Temu if I'm going on a backpack holiday, because I know I'm going to throw
Right.
it away
Yeah.
after I've worn it once, because it ain't going to wash and it ain't going to last. But when it comes
that's
to
true.
my personal gear, my fire gear, my
Right.
uniforms, then you've
Yeah.
got to invest in good stuff.
So that's a challenge for the industry to make products that are going to have a longevity. And I think that's going to be a challenge as well. I think durability is starting to move up on some because the concern with cancer and what have you. And there's also new methods of washing that are a lot gentler on the garments. So, but they cost more. And so there's going to be a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, but there's a cost everywhere, isn't there?
Done.
You're either paying in the short
That's
term or
true.
you're paying in the long term. I mean, Helmut, when you think back to when you were firefighting and you look at the principle of cost, do you ever have like frustrations or feelings about like what you were exposed to when you were firefighting, and do you ever have them sort of slip? I think about some of the stupid stuff I was doing 20 years ago, and I kind of have
I was a young firefighter. I didn't really care about my gear.
I
It
know,
was heavy,
but now
and
what you know
uncomfortable.
now.
And now, expectations are a lot higher. People, when I was 20 or 19 back then when I started Bavarian Volunteer Brigade, nothing special. But nowadays, the 19-year-olds, they know about Nomex, they know about PBI, they follow the social media, they are reading stuff. AI changes a big thing. And we see now with the next generation procurement managers, they have a different approach. They want to know what's better, what's the next innovation. They are less conservative than the former generation was, in my mind.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted also to add, Pete, and Bill said it, we also got more innovative in how we sold the product. That means, for example, we hired local people. We started the international markets. When did we hire the first international ones? Early 2000. I started 2003. Now we have people spread in Asia, in Europe, in Australia. We have people then to speak Spanish and Portuguese to handle the South American.
Got to create champions on the inside, haven't you?
Exactly. Because we have a story to tell, and it's sometimes not easy to tell all the technical background information. You need somebody on the spot to really train the market, educate the market, and tell them what makes PBI so special. So we also
people love to learn. They hate being sold to.
And they're more hungry.
We love to learn, don't we, though?
Right, exactly.
And my feeling is when I travel, apart from few regions are always different.
Yeah.
Where you think, okay, maybe they're not high on our priority because the mentality still takes a lot longer. Still, firefighter market is kind of conservative. Not as conservative anymore as it used to be when I started, but still kind of. And so we have countries where we think there's a big potential for better products, and people ask for it a lot more than they did maybe 20 years ago. And then the cycles get also shorter.
Yeah. When you're thinking about the cycles and the shelf life, just to echo back on the durability point for a second, what actually happens to a lot of the different PPEs out there after sort of 6 months, 12 months real use? Where do sort of less durable products actually start failing? If people were trying to translate this into, driving to work today and looking at their kit and going, oh yeah, I see what he's on about. Like where does a lot of the other sort of less durable products start to fail over time, and what can that mean to the reality of a firefighter?
Well, a lot of times you'll see the failures along the seams.
Okay.
So, you start getting unraveling or seam breakage, or even if you're under stress at certain stress points where it just abrades through, you get holes, those types of things. And I'd have to say that in general, most of the outer shells out there are pretty durable from a standpoint of
Mechanically.
how they handle that. There have been cases where there's been products that have been brought in that fail because, for instance, carbon fiber has been used in certain instances, and carbon. One thing about carbon is that it's always brittle. It will break.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, instant debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
So you have it in a hood or in a parts of your fire gear, and you wash it, and your lint basket's black because that's all you're getting, all the carbon that comes out of it.
Yeah.
And so those products just
it's a great product if you have it in isolation in something in the built infrastructure where it's not going to be moved and interacted with. Fair enough.
Right. I mean, carbon's in composites, and it does a fantastic job, and but
it's not
doesn't
clothing.
move. Like
it's not meant to be worn. Yeah.
Right. And we've seen other products. There was a product that existed between the late 90s and about 2010 called Bazofil, and it was a melamine fiber. And it was very brittle as well, and it would break off, and you'd find it, and so the durability issues. Unfortunately, we can do the testing and we can show that, but over time, it really, the marketplace kind of ferrets that stuff out. I mean but it takes time.
I mean, very often when we tell people about durability issues, like whether it's a PBO fiber, carbon fiber, or back then I remember Bazofil many years ago, we predicted, and then it happened. But okay, you lose out 1, 2, 3, 4 years, but the firefighters then find out, oh, those guys, they were true in what they told us, that there would be an issue. Because at the end of the day, coming from the fiber background, every fiber has limitations, and every textile product, you need to know those limitations.
Yeah.
And be open. And also, when it comes to failure of garments, okay, people talk about the outer shell. It gets more difficult when you talk about durability of the moisture barrier, because you don't see it. You may feel it, but you don't see it. You have to measure it. And another durability story, it was years ago, I think it was Grampian Fire Brigade in Scotland. They tested garments that were 10 years old. They sent them to BG for a mannequin burn, and the results were as good or even better than the ones of new garments. And that shows the product does its job over years and years and years. I think that's also a very interesting message.
Yeah, there's something almost frustrating about being right but early. Like there's no real gratification in doing the told you so when you know that told you so has come at the cost of somebody else, and that's got to be. That's got to be quite frustrating, especially when, because there's a lot of people that are doing the gotcha. We see lots of products break into a market and they're able to get the quick, low-hanging fruit wins. They've got some incredible salesperson or something like that.
Yeah.
And then a year or two down the line, you go, oh, damn. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that doesn't feel like the win it probably should do for companies.
You will
like
see
PPI.
a lot of those stories in a few weeks to come at Intershoots, with the newest products and
brother.
latest revolution and things like that. But I mean,
how do you balance professionalism with that?
Pardon?
how do you balance professionalism with that? You know, when you come around and you're seeing some of the breakout products and stuff like that, and you have to hold your tongue when you're coming on a public podcast like this, and you go, that's BS. Like the jury's already out on that, but they're going to go. And I'm probably speaking to procurement people here, like people that are in procurement in their organizations, and they're thinking they genuinely are trying to do the absolute best. But like so many people are retiring and there's so many new people. Procurement isn't always a very sexy job to go into. Maybe the fire officer that gets put into that department would have rather been on operations. So they go into that department and then they get sent some free stuff and someone takes them out for dinner and whatever.
Well, a lot of them say they want to make their mark and I want to change something and this and that. And we've seen that over the years. Exactly. And it's kind of like, well, you try to educate and you try to inform, but sometimes the door's closed or the ears are closed and they're not listening. So, I mean, I'll give you, this is the most recent example of that. And it's kind of interesting because as I told you, the protection, the layers and the air, that's what gives you your protection. But part of that is also the composite and how much conductivity it has, so heat conductivity, you would think you would want a very low heat conductivity in any product that's going to be in that fire kit. Well, we've seen products that have come in that have very high conductivity, like carbon, I don't want to say too much about other things.
I know, it's tough.
But
gotta be cute.
Carbon's general. I mean, but there is somebody that came in, and this has happened in the States. They've taken a fabric and they've coated it with graphene. Okay, so graphene is the most conductive material known to man, and you're like going, are you kidding me? And
yes, but that's you know that,
right?
But they'll sexy it up with some big words when they're speaking.
Oh, absolutely,
of course.
Absolutely. Actually, we had one, and I kid you not, and it just makes me laugh to this day. We had another fiber it's still in the market, a little bit, but it's fading out pretty quickly. But anyway, this product had a conductivity issue. And we've said it, guys, this thing conducts heat. And they actually made an advertisement that said, oh, yeah, the conductivity is really helpful because when you come out of the fire, you cool off faster. And we're like, really? What happens when you go in the fire? You're going to heat up.
No. I don't want to talk about that. I'm not talking about that bit. I'm on about when you come out, it conducts the cold really well. And you're like, great. So use that for refrigeration project then. Maybe if that's the angle you're going for, brother. But like you're in the sorry, maybe I didn't explain it. You're in the firefighting market. That's kind of what we're optimizing for at this moment in time.
Right. Right.
But it's got to be so goddamn hard to keep. That's what I'm saying. Like keep your professionalism in a long trusted professional and high values company like PBI.
I always say at the end, you can't beat science. I mean, snow is white and 1 + 1 gives 2. But I sat in meetings where literally somebody said the snow is black. And as you said, maybe a good speaker, a person with charisma, and some people believe it. And you sit there and think, what is going on here?
I know, but you don't want to lower yourself to that level.
White,
excuse my language.
That's what we meet a lot of times.
Someone said to me a little while ago, they're like, don't wrestle with a pig because you'll both get covered in mud and the pig will enjoy it. And like from a distance, all the people see is two pigs arguing. And it's like, you shouldn't be arguing with some, but then they will go to people that are not educated on that material and they'll tell them. And you're like, you just want to reach over and go, stop listening to this person. Stop listening. Because I can see the direction of travel. You feel like you're building a relationship with this person. And that is not the best thing for the people that you're supposed to be there representing, for the firefighters on the ground who are going to actually suffer from what you're doing. Do you know what I mean?
And I'll give you an example of how do we try to handle it. I mean, back in the UK when I was actually starting, there was another product that was out there that was having durability issues already in the States. They had introduced it in the States and they were trying to get it into the UK. And there was one chief that I knew, and he was getting ready to go onto this thing. And I said, look, I actually took a trip out of my way to go see him. I said, look, you're a friend of mine. I'm trying to tell you, don't go to this product. You're going to have problems. I don't care if you buy PBI. Don't, stay in what you're in. You're going to be better off than if you go to this product. And unfortunately, he still didn't listen to me. But those are the things you try to do and try to help fire departments make the good decisions. But
So
it's all about credibility. Let's try
and narrow it down. I want to be respectful of time, but let's try and narrow this down. So let's imagine utopian world. You're sat in a procurement meeting. You've just joined an organization. Let's try and put this to the people that are moving into these positions, because they might be listening to this. They're going, "Oh, bloody hell, there's a podcast with, procurement experts, PPE experts, PBI." They're going into that first procurement meeting. What are, and we'll maybe have 2 or 3 from each of you. What are the questions that must be asked before making a decision? What are services getting wrong when they're selecting PPE, and what are the questions because they say, a problem well defined is half solved. And if you ask better questions, you get better answers, but you've got to know what questions to ask. I think about this a lot with podcasting. I'm like, if you ask the best question, you get the best answer. So what are the questions that you think those procurement experts should be asking of those people?
Helm, you want to go first?
First of all, you invite more than one. That means there are different pros out there. That's the first thing, that you get the point of view of the different manufacturers, whether it's the garment makers, the fiber guys. Just get a complete picture. And of course, with AI and other things, you definitely have to inform you prior to the meeting as much as you can. Or I know procurement they got technical support, because maybe they were not so technical. They got support for somebody else, a guy with technical background. And then you make your questionnaire, first of all,
but when I'm getting support from a technical background, who should I be getting? A fabric expert? Should I be getting a toxicologist? Because there's some departments, they genuinely will struggle with this, because everyone that knew is retired. So now they're kind of having to make this up through old policies and good intentions.
There are a lot of technical tech experts out there in different countries, in different regions. So what I recommend younger procurement guys, the more experienced ones, talk to that person ABC or this person XYZ, because they have experience. They went through the same process. Big tenders, demanding tenders. They wanted something new and innovation, everything. So I said, talk to these guys and talk from firefighter to firefighter. I'm from the industry. I want to sell my product, but I also have a credibility that I don't want to lose. I don't, as Bill said, I tell you something, whether you buy PBI or not, it's still your call, but this is the truth. This is science. That's how we try to do it. And then, then you have your questionnaire with questions, and it's more or less standard. They ask for references. They want a technical overview of the latest innovations with the ins and outs, pros and cons, in comparison with other products. Those are usually the questions that come up. And durability nowadays is getting more and more important to a lot of people, because they wash it more often, as Bill stated. They ask for new ways to wash it, whether it's the new CO2 technology, liquid CO2, others. And they ask us for how do you compare these. So we are getting now also experts in care and cleaning. It's not our product, but we try to become experts in that field as well. And there's
I'm going to force you to stop there, because I want to give Bill a chance as well. You're going to give me like 6, 7 questions there. You can give me too many, brother. Bill's going to have nothing to say.
Well, I think procurement people, that the one thing that I found in the fire service that works pretty well is the peer-to-peer experience. So, references. So as Helm mentioned, who wears your gear? Who give me somebody that's been in your gear for 5 years. Or give me a list of people.
If it's run out of, the sales pitch has run out and gone cold by then, they'll know what it
give me those people that you can refer to. And we use that a lot as well, because we've got a pretty good track record around the world. So if people would talk more, and we've known places where certain products have failed, and you say, well, why don't you go talk to those guys? Now it gets a little dicey sometimes, because sometimes departments don't want to own up that they possibly made a mistake.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And so it sometimes that works. But to me, the peer-to-peer and, what the market is telling you, is probably one of the better sources of information. Now, like Helm said, we're trying to sell you. We're going to try to convince you that PBI is the best, and everyone else is going to try to convince you that their product's the best. So it's hard to sift through that, and I understand the difficulty that, especially you come in and you get this. You say, well, who's coming to see me? A fiber producer? What? Do they make garments? Who the hell are these people? It's interesting.
I absolutely agree with you, actually, because it comes back to one of the first points I made. It's like people don't like being sold to, but they love shopping with friends. So if they do ring their friend in the other organization and go, hey, brother, these people are coming in, like, you used to, like 5 years, haven't you? And they're like, oh, yeah, you meeting with so-and-so? And they're like, yeah, nice, solid. We've had it for like 5 years. Stuff's great. Actually, does what it says on the tin. We were surprised, actually, because we had to replace the previous one after like 9 months of using it. And then nobody will tell you, but like, so-and-so got a promotion. Well, it still cost us like 900 grand to replace the stuff that we bought that only lasted 6 months. Whereas when we went with PBI, we've had the stuff for like 5 years. And the long term, the reason the current leader looks better is because we aren't having to re-spend on the last lot of stuff. And that's the thing, isn't it? When someone's only got a year left, they maybe don't care about the longevity of it. Whereas if someone's coming into something, they're brand new in the procurement department, they're brand new in the senior leadership team. You want to make a decision like this, that when in 3, 4, 5, 6 years time, you can look back and go, yeah, see, that was the right decision at the time. And now it's proven that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's easy to blame people that have retired, but ultimately, they say true leadership is building trees under which you'll never have the privilege to sit under the shade of them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and we're supposed to do that, aren't we? We're supposed to leave it better than we found it. Make decisions now that the firefighters of 3, 4, 5, 10 years time will go, thank God, Bill, Helmut, Pete, Jane, Sarah, whoever made that decision. Because that's what your legacy is going to be, isn't it?
Correct.
Absolutely. I want to be respectful of time. We're going to be out in Inshoots together. I want to shout out Abby, putting all this together, really good of her. And we get some time together in Inshoots. I'm going to have the privilege of trying out some of the newer products. I've been wearing PBI for about 17 years anyway. So I'm an easy sell. I know this stuff works. I know it's best. But with respect, I have also tried other providers. So when I've been to, Germany, America, when I've trained in Canada, Venice, Australia, I have experienced difference. Because there's a recency bias there where you're like, well, what the hell do you know? You never tried anything different. And I'm like, no, I have. I've done it, because when I go there, I don't take my kit with me. I just wear what they give me. And that's when you can really see the differences, when you're there for 2 weeks doing fire behavior training and you feel the difference. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. And that's why, total transparency, I don't make any money doing this. Podcast is just a professional adventure. So I am probably a bit too romantic about not engaging with people if I don't believe it is something that I'm willing to put my name to. Not that my name means anything to anybody else, but my name means a lot to me. And I don't want to associate myself with people that I don't believe in what they're doing. And I'm a massive fan of the PBI, and I think there's no surprise that it is one of the dominants in the global sphere. So I really appreciate your time, fellas. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Some love to the family, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us and having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.